And with that, we proudly welcome the Dr. Angela Y. Davis to our platform. If you all could please welcome her with so much love and affirmation in the chat. We are so deeply honored to have you here. This is truly both an answered prayer and a revolutionary dream. And while we understand that you are just doing what you have been called to do, your calling has truly transformed our world and has transformed so many of our practices and ways of being. And so, thank you for showing up here. We do not take your presence here lightly. On behalf of Justice for Black Girls and myself, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And there is overwhelming love in the chat. Overwhelming love in the chat, of course, expressing how grateful we are to have you. And with that, we are going to jump right in. As you know, you are here with our Justice for Black Girls Fellows and Ambassadors, youth leaders that are 15 through 19 from across the nation. Some of them cried tears of joy after hearing they would be here with you, and we're going to jump right in. You talked, and we noted it in your video, about the importance of conjuring hope. So we want to start there. What is bringing you hope? What are you doing now to bring yourself some hope and imagination right now, Dr. Davis?
Well, you know, we cannot afford not to have hope. Hope is what is absolutely necessary, the sine qua non for struggle. And and what brings me hope today during these hopeless times is the fact that I know that we've been here before. And looking at the way in which the centuries long struggle for Black liberation has unfolded, I don't know whether there's ever been a time that we would say that urged us to move forward. We've always had to encounter obstacles. That is why we call it a struggle, right? If it were not a struggle, it would be there, for us to simply claim it. Um, but of course, this is an especially difficult time. Um, and I'm having some issues with my video, so I may have to unfreeze it. I'm not sure, why it's freezing. But yeah, this is uh, precisely a period when a good deal of our work should be focused on generating hope. And and we recognize that we do this not only for ourselves today, and perhaps not even primarily, because we will get to actually benefit from the work that we do. But we do it because we know that we are the recipients of, of the activism, I guess you would say, of people many, many decades ago, people whose names we do not know. Uh, and in order to pay that back, we have to provide the same kind of legacy for those who come after us.
Ashe, thank you so much for that. Charlie, Sharja, Anijah, and Contrita, what about you all? What's bringing hope and imagination for you all?
Oh, you can go. Okay. Hi, I'm Sharja. Oh my God, this is like an honor that I can't even express through words. But I do want to first express my sincere appreciation for you, Dr. Davis, being here, giving us your time and energy. Um, I have two life goals in my entire life. I know I'm only 17, but one of them is to be in conversation with you, and sadly, Asada Shakur, who is not here with us today. But um, to answer the question, I feel like I'm sustaining hope through my own creation. I created this magazine called Ubuntu Harlem this past year, and I'm from Harlem, originally born and raised. And it's a digital magazine and community space I founded to try and bring light to our voices as youth. So it's created by Harlem youth, for Harlem youth, about Harlem youth. And the idea came from my semester abroad that I did in South Africa. And I learned so much about the idea of Ubuntu and what that means for like I am because you are, and this idea of community that can really be translated so much back to the diaspora in particular. It's about remembering that our existence and survival are tied to one another and that we are all really interconnected. Ubuntu Harlem is really about young people reconnecting through creativity, storytelling, and collective care. So we use art, photography, and writing to really showcase the Harlem spirit and how it still lives within us. I'm also Puerto Rican and Belizean, so I guess one phrase in Spanish that really translates to it is "seguimos aquí," which means we are still here. So really trying to amplify the fact that despite gentrification, or within the words of James Baldwin, Negro removal, like we are still here and our voices still matter. So I guess for me, imagination is sustained when we gather, we create, and honor each other's voices, like this conference here today. That's where hope really feels real for me, where I see that we get to redefine what Harlem means, as well as what all American ghettos actually mean on our own terms. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
All right, I can go next. I did cry tears of joy when I found out I would be in conversation with you. So I thank you for allowing me to take up this space with you. If you're new, I'm Anijah Hewley, a second-year political science and sociology major on the pre-law track, and I attend Spelman College. And I sustain hope by remembering that I come from people who dreamed me into this very existence. I often try to return to this idea of community that my ancestors upheld ever so dearly, even though we are in a time where it may seem hard to go back to community, but we do come from the most resilient people. And understanding that if I am a manifestation of their imagination, then a world of liberation is possible, it's feasible. And the community that I have now at my HBCU at Spelman in Atlanta, they've shown me more care and affection than the government ever will. And we are in a period that currently seems completely regressive. But to sustain hope is a political act. And if we stop imagining liberation because the world tells us to, then we give up on the dreams of our ancestors, the dreams of ourselves, and the dreams of our future descendants. So I think that if we keep our ancestors in mind and our descendants in mind, it's super important to sustain imagination for a liberated world. Thank you.
Ashe.
Wow. That was a really great question and some really great answers. I'm also really excited to be in this space with all of you. I'm Charlie. I am calling in from Riverside, California. And I guess I'm sustaining hope by centering myself in girls like me. You know, I think that spaces like this are becoming increasingly important, especially when we're being pushed out of spaces that aren't centering us, you know? So I think that these spaces like this are important, and I'm centering being a part of spaces like this, and that's helping me to sustain my hope. James Baldwin said you have to go the way your blood beats, and I'm feeling like that's where I'm at right now. So.
Ashe. Anijah, do you want to ask your question?
All right, my question for Dr. Davis is, throughout your work, you speak about freedom as both a collective responsibility and a daily practice. What might it look like for a young Black girl to practice abolition while navigating a school or university that was never built for her liberation?
Well, thank you for the question. I think I would begin by saying that we have to engage in practices, all of us, that expand our sense of who we are. Because we often think of ourselves as individuals, and we're much, much larger than that. We're much greater than that. And thinking of ourselves as single individuals makes it more difficult to imagine accomplishing huge things. little people can't accomplish huge things like freedom and liberation. But when we all come together and imagine ourselves uh, as collectively active, collectively large, then we can move forward. So I would say that first of all, never try to do anything by yourself. That will not work. Uh, the first thing I always try to do wherever I go, whether it's about schooling or whether it's moving into an environment that I don't know, the first thing I try to do is to find my community. And if my community isn't there, then I create the community because I know it always has to be about much more than me, myself. As individuals, we are very weak. As collectives, we have the potential to change the world. So that would be my first piece of advice. If we had the time for a long conversation, I might, share more experiences. But I think what's so important, particularly during this time in this country, is to challenge the individualism that is so rampant, that is connected with racism, that's connected with capitalism, and to figure out how we can create increasingly larger communities of struggle.
Wow. Again, a really great question and a really great answer. I really appreciate you sharing that with us and your honesty in that. So following up with my question, as part of my very young abolitionist journey, I've been thinking about what my dream school would look like. And so my question for you is, what would your dream learning space for young people look like?
Oh, wow. That's a huge question, isn't it? And I would say perhaps we begin by recognizing that we can learn wherever we are. Don't only learn in those spaces that are dedicated to professionalized notions of acquiring knowledge. I'm talking about schools and colleges and universities. We learn wherever we are. And one of the problems that we encounter and often replicate in this society that is so of grounded in individualism and racism and elitism is one of the problems that we often confront within ourselves is that we're asked to internalize the notion that when we learn and acquire knowledge, that we're better than those who have not had the same opportunities that we have. And, oftentimes people who learn in other spaces, and my experience for many decades has been with people behind bars, people who learn in jails and prisons, often are much more knowledgeable than people who learn in spaces that are dedicated to that professionalized process of learning. So I think I would say is we have to like broaden our sense of what it means to learn, what it means to acquire knowledge, what it means to acquire knowledge that matters. And from where I stand, knowledge should be at the service of creating better worlds, not only for humans, but for all beings that inhabit this planet. And if we can't define knowledge in that way, then it ends up militating against the very process of bettering our worlds. It ends up becoming destructive. It ends up supporting racism and colonialism, and it ends up being responsible for the marginalization of people of color and disabled people. So I would, suggest that the dream learning space would keep all of these things in mind, wherever it happens to be, whether it's in a school or whether it's in a prison.
Sure.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I think we all need to keep in mind that learning is a social concept and we can learn in any space. Our next question for you is, you have spoken a lot about how movements can unintentionally replicate the hierarchies that they try to dismantle. How can abolitionist teaching avoid reproducing those same patterns, especially when schools still operate within unequal systems? How might an abolitionist framework help educators imagine alternatives to punishment that still hold space for accountability and growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really complicated question, isn't it? But it's a central question. It's a really important question. And and I think that in attempting to answer or respond to this question, whether or not we actually have the answers, um, we have to strive for a kind of flexibility that oftentimes pedagogies, conventional pedagogies do not insist on. Uh, Hold on one second. We have to strive for a kind of flexibility that that calls upon us to question everything, even those things that we think are foundational to our own process of learning. Because oftentimes it's it's those things that are most normal, those things that we take for granted, that are responsible for, as you pointed out, the replication of the hierarchies that militate against our quest for a freedom. And of course, in recent times, we have been called upon to think more deeply about the ways in which race and class and gender and sexuality uh, uh, intersect and and interconnect. We've been called upon to think very differently about gender, and I think your generation is really fortunate that you are growing up at a time when your brains are still, are very flexible, and that you can accommodate these new ways of thinking about the world, whereas older people really have to struggle with that. Uh, and 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 of course, this moment is what you might call a counter-revolutionary moment, considering the politics of this country. But I don't think that should prevent us from recognizing how fortunate we are to be alive at a time when things are in the process of changing, where our notions of gender have really transformed. Your parents or your grandparents, your great grandparents might have a really hard time dealing with what you, as young people, take for granted today. And that is the process. As a young person, I think I imbibe the notion that there would be a revolution and change would happen. You know, the clock strikes 12 and we're in a new era and everything is different. We go from capitalism to socialism. We go from racism to a sense of equality for all. And it just doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. Instead, instead, I think we have to look at processes and change. Change takes time, which is not to say that young people should have this sense of urgency and call for change right now. Uh, and I think we better understand the way the world works if we affirm both that sense of urgency that young people bring. Yes, change has to happen now. It should have happened yesterday. And combine that with a sense of how the actual process takes place and how it's sometimes about generations and how your generation is right now producing the revolution that both you and those who come after you will appreciate and will live. Uh, so, you know, I think that we deal with the ways in which oftentimes our struggles to change are unintentionally replicating that which we are trying to change by calling for that kind of flexibility and urging people to develop a practice of not taking anything for granted. Because oftentimes that which we take for granted holds the conservatism that holds us back. Uh, and so to develop a practice of recognizing that what you take for granted today, tomorrow may be that which you're trying to change and transform. You can't even, recognize it oftentimes. For example, I often use our eating practices. And those people who eat like the majority of people in this country eat, and eat meat and eat animals, eat cows, and um, they don't necessarily know that they're a part of the process of the um, of global warming. They're part of the process that is bringing our planet closer to its demise, because the the space that animals who are raised for food all over the planet takes up, if it continues this way, it will that space will be responsible, for the end of human life, and not only human life, but non-human life as well. So sometimes we have to stretch our minds and recognize that what we take for granted today may be precisely that which we have to struggle hard to get rid of tomorrow. And if we recognize it, we should be doing it today as well.
Shay, thank you. This has been
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Katrina, you want to ask your last question? Because following them, we'll only have time for one more closing statement.
Hi, thank you so much. I was having a little bit of connectivity issues, but I'm deeply honored to be on this panel with you, Dr. Angela Davis. And my name is Katrina Green. I'm a junior at Cornell University, studying government on the pre-law track. I actually had the honor of watching of you coming to speak this past February with a lot of the craziness that was happening on our campus. I think continuously as we're seeing on specifically Cornell's campus and a lot of other like predominantly white campuses and also just colleges around the country, the limitization of freedom of speech, of movement, of speaking up, and a lot of students feeling scared or feeling closed off to do that. And I guess my question for you today is how can schools, in your opinion, best optionalize joy and healing and well-being as essential to an abolitionist daily practice, academically, socially, and structurally, so that liberation is not just abstract, but it's also lived on a continuing basis?
That is a hard question. uh, because, when we attend these institutions, we have to keep in mind that the goal of the institution is not necessarily the goals of the students who are attending. I mean, students are among the most, if not the most radical population of our world. I mean, and precisely there, in the Cornell and Ithaca area, it was the students who stood up and said no, right? And it was the administration that tried to um, shut them up. It was the administration that actually barred some of the students from campus who had participated in the demonstrations against the weapons that were produced by Israel that were a part of a fair on the campus at Cornell. Um, and and so there's never going to be any safe space. I mean, I know we like to talk about safe spaces, and sometimes it is important for us to come together where we know that we will not be under attack. But in general, the spaces of struggle are not safe spaces. And that means we have to get used to the conflict. And we have to get used to loving what we can do in institutions like this, and the what we learn, the books that we read, the way in which we learn how to think about the world in very different ways. We love that. But at the same time, we know that the institution is connected to a capitalist society. It's a part of the whole process of capitalism that is focused much, much more on profit than anything else. And so, but that doesn't stop us from claiming our right to be there, and that doesn't stop us from trying to find ways of creating joy, and because there's no way we can continue in the world if we can't um, also learn how to love what we're doing and love those with whom we are doing it. And so I think that's probably up to the students and the faculty, and uh, although there's some, I'm trying to be as flexible as possible because we find allies everywhere, and we cannot discount the possibility of finding allies everywhere. But we have to get, I suppose, relieve ourselves of the burden of thinking about the university as an institution providing everything for us. Uh, and that's why student movements have been the most important movements for generations and for hundreds of years. Uh, we wouldn't be where we are in terms of solidarity with Palestine if it were not for students, not only in this country, but all over the world. And But we can't forget that we need joy. If we can't laugh and love, then it makes no sense to be fighting for a better world, because we have to, in many ways, try to imagine what it's going to feel like in that better world. And even in that better world, it's not all going to be about joy and love. It's also going to be about conflict and struggle, because I believe that one of the most beautiful things about freedom movements is that the journey itself introduces us to so much more. And we learn that freedom is not so much a destination as it is the journey itself. And um, and as we move forward in that journey, we begin to recognize that there is so much more that we never imagined. So now we have to keep space for that which we will only ever be able to imagine in the future. Uh, when I say we, I mean collectively we. And to recognize that we're struggling for that right now, too. We're struggling to create that space for the future of knowledge of what it might mean to be free.
Ashe, Ashe, thank you so much. As we get ready to transition into our final question, I want our young people to consider this question because it is grand and it's complex. And I know that you won't be able to fully articulate it in 2 sentences, but I want us to try to keep it as brief as possible as we transition out. I want us to think about and I know this is on your sheets as question 4. I want you to think about how you are being equipped with the tools. What do you need from us to ensure that you can continue this journey towards liberation? How can we show up for you in ways that adequately equip you? And as Dr. Davis, we end with you. Do you see similarities between who you were as a young person and our young people now? In what ways did folks show up or not show up that we can alter and shift and transition to show up better for our young people now as we're in a, as you named, counter-revolutionary period? So we'll start with our young people and we'll close out with Dr. Davis.
I could go first. I think that is a very complex question. I would definitely say more intergenerational dialogue. Um, I think for a lot of people, I think for a good amount of people, there are a lot of people that are able to do that. But we live in a world where people don't listen anymore, or people are like, "Oh, young people, they're this," or "Older people, they're that." Um, and I think, especially in a time now where there's so many things being attacked, especially in the Black community, especially in communities of color, I think it's so important for intergenerational dialogue, and just allowing people to have the breath and the space to be able to speak their truth and not get bashed for it, but at the same time to also listen. The same as you speak, you listen, and you gain that knowledge, you gain that wisdom for any type of generation that you're able to implement it into every single part of your life. So I think that would be my basis of like the question and answering it to the best of my ability.
I
Okay.
definitely
Well,
agree with.
you can go real quick.
Okay. I definitely agree with Katrina. It's important for us to be in community and conversation with one another. I'll also say that I think that adult leaders in youth work need to understand that those of us that are young right now are experts in our own experiences, you know, as what it's like to be youth modernly. And we know what we need. So making sure to make space for us and continue to listen to us about our own experiences is really important also.
I think that we also need like what everything that Justice for Black Girls stands for, like a participatory approach to education that allows us to engage as critical thinkers and engage with the world around us instead of passive observers, because our current education system acts as if we're objects to deposit information into instead of producers of knowledge and engagers of critical consciousness. We need books in our schools, or we know that our institutions do not serve us, so we need books like those written by Dr. Angela Davis in our communities to help us understand how systems currently suppress us and what we can do to contradict these systems and exist with joy and liberated minds.
I second what all my sisters have said today. I think also we need access to accessible knowledge. Critical race theory being banned in our schools is affecting us on a detrimental level because not everybody is as privileged as us to have these spaces. I think it's like important that to truly empower us, education or institutions as well as adults create the space for our leadership and trust us with genuine decision-making power because transformation can't happen without young people willing to uproot and rebuild what no longer serves us. I think the first step really is to acknowledge that we are a part of systems and systems don't change without real structural shift. We need to be able to live in systems that aren't built off of current day struggles and aren't built off the backs of genocide, greed, and inhumanity. Thank you.
Ashe. And that brings us back to you, Dr. Davis. What similarities do you see with your younger self growing up in Birmingham, and our young people now?
Well, and I'm really, really happy that even though there are basic similarities, I listen to you and I realize that worlds have changed,
Mm.
and that helps me to acknowledge that the work that we as older people have done, even when we didn't necessarily know what we were doing, that really matters. It may not matter in the way we wanted it to matter because we wanted the revolution to happen yesterday. So we did not get to see that structural change where there would be no more racism and no more colonialism and no more capitalism. When I was a young person, we were just beginning to develop a sense of the place of gender in our struggles. And I see all of you, beautiful young women who are so articulate and who recognize what it is we need to do now and in order to move toward the future. And that makes me see a huge gap between my own experiences as a young girl, a young woman, and what is happening now. And that's the way it should be. That's exactly the way it should be. I also realize that those of us who are older uh, need to engage in learning processes that position us as the students and you all as the teachers. So, I've learned so much just listening to you this afternoon that I wish we could develop a sense of what it means to be educated that is truly intergenerational and which generations learn from each other. But yeah, I think about you all and I just smile and I realize that, all of the struggles that we were engaging in over the decades. I mean, I'm like, I'm going to be 82 very soon. And I've been involved since I was a teenager. And it makes me feel so happy that I have been a part of a process that has produced beautiful young Black women. And I'm so happy to follow you into the future.
Oh, Shay, I can't think of a more powerful way to end today's conversation. Wow, today has been such an immense gift to an entire legacy of Black folks, of Black girls, of gender expansive people who make space for this. So, again, we thank you with immense gratitude for you living and loving out loud, for you learning out loud, for you interrogating out loud in ways that equip us and empower us. And I don't use the word empowerment lightly, to show up and interrogate and challenge today. I believe empowerment is a deeply spiritual process, and I believe only folks that are deeply connected with spirit can empower other folks, because it has to be rooted in something greater than us. So I don't believe that empowerment is a simple process, and it has to come from a deep and rich desire for liberation for all. So thank you for the way that you show up. We have to believe that we can transform the world. We have to act like we can radically reimagine as you teach us, and we have to do it all the time. And so thank you for living that and enabling us to show up today. It has been a gift to share space with you. Thank you so much, Dr. Davis.
Thank you so much.
And thank you.
Bye. And with that, we have neared the end of our Justice for Black Girls Virtual Conference 2025. We hope that you have enjoyed today's space as much as we have. We hope that you have learned something that will nourish you far after this session ends. We hope that you've been able to contribute, because again, we're not just learners, but we're producers of knowledge. And as Dr. Davis eloquently mentioned, it's beautiful when we can be both students and teachers. I hope that you've been able to feel like a student today, but also you'll carry this knowledge somewhere else and be a teacher. I cannot thank you all enough for the love that you all pour in to Justice for Black Girls. I cannot thank you all enough for the way that you all ride for us in spite of and because of who we are. So thank you again. This is just the beginning. We were delayed this year being in person, but we will not be next year. We are already claiming that next year's in-person gathering will be everything and then some. Please continue to give shouts out to our young people, and please don't just shout out the young people that are here, that are articulating, that are learning, but also give extra love to our babies that don't have it all figured out, that ain't able to be a part of this presentation today. Please show up for Black girls, period. Not just the Black girls that are showing up in ways that overwhelmingly make you proud, but but our babies that are kind of struggling to figure out their own self sense of pride. So just show up for all of our babies all the time, because our world is better when we do, and we need every single answer that lives within every single Black girl. Ashe. Bye, y'all.